Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking over the 917 patch notes. So as always, I will have timestamps in the description if you want to jump around to your favorite parts. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. It does help other people find it. And let's go ahead and get in here. Okay, so I looked these over. I really don't think, honestly, there are going to be that many significant changes for the vast majority of players. But there might be some that could be interesting. I should probably do a separate video about this, but just really quickly, I just want to talk about what I think are some of the root causes of some of the frustrations that people have had with Season 9 in general. Because, I mean, people complain about every season, but I think the main thing is inconsistency in sort of balancing and amongst players. I think that's the key word of 2019 is inconsistency. Another key word is snowball. So what happens now in solo queue, more so than many seasons, maybe not all seasons that I can remember, is games just feel like they're decided really quickly. There definitely are room, for comebacks, and we make comebacks all the time on the stream, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every night. Be sure to check that out. Sunday through Thursday on YouTube, Friday and Saturday on Twitch. But so many champions are balanced around almost being like 1v9 super powerful if they get ahead and if they're in the hands of a strong person, but being totally worthless if it's someone that doesn't have a lot of experience on the champion or if they fall behind on the champion. And that just leads for games that feel really inconsistent a lot of the time. Because if you're against, that Silas on the enemy Silas who's mid lane or jungle or top or wherever, and he gets ahead, he gets 3 kills in lane, especially if it's 3 kills over another snowbally champion. So if he gets like 3 kills over a Kayle, that's such a dramatic swing in the game because he is a champion who kind of can 1v9 if he gets ahead. And a Kayle is a similar type of champion, but she's completely worthless if she's behind. So it creates a lot of problems. It's like a double whammy. Everyone's playing these high-risk champions, and then if one high-risk champion beats the other high-risk champion, then it basically creates like a 6v4. The person who is beaten is totally worthless and dead weight for their team, and the person who's ahead almost feels like 2 champions because that's just the design on the champion. They snowball really hard. And there are so many champions that have been like this throughout the season, and really this was kind of like started, I think, mostly with the reworks of Kayle, Urgot, and Aatrox last season, and have continued into this season. So, a Kayle is famous for this. You still have champions like Yasuo and Riven that are pretty popular. They're famous for this. Silas. Now you have Qiyana. Just like pretty much all of these fighter assassin type of champs. Aurelia. And so everybody wants to play these champions because everyone wants to 1v9 all the time, every game. So that's what Riot's trying to give them. But at the same time, there has to be some kind of risk to balance that out, right? You don't want a champion who can consistently 1v9 every game, or that's imbalanced. But if you give them those few games where, they can really go off, then that can feel good. So it feels like that's been their approach to balance is, okay, let's allow for these extreme cases where someone can feel really powerful, where they can 1v9, but let's take away the consistency. Let's not allow them to do that every game. Let's make those champions high risk, high reward if someone chooses to play that champion. The problem is there's so many of those types of champions, and they're very popular right now. So everybody plays those, right? And part of this also is that tanks are terrible most of the time in solo queue, right? You just can't play things like Ornn and Malachi top lane. Poppy or Shen are probably about as close as it's going to get, and I would argue those aren't even really top tier. Like, they're okay in some matchups, but it's like, why would you want to play something like Poppy or Shen unless you love those champions when you could play something like Aurelia top lane, right? A champion who's really hard to kill but also does a ton of damage and is really immobile. So I just think that there's just too much power, too much scaling, too much inconsistency in these games, because that takes away agency from everybody else, right? If you're not the chosen one in the game, right? If you're not the person who gets the 3 kills and you're not on a 1v9 champion, then it's almost like you're not playing the game. Either you're getting carried or the enemy team has that and there's very little you can do. So you can still win, but it's just the design that they've had on these champions to balance through inconsistency, I think, is incorrect. I think that especially for solo queue, they need to add more consistency to these champions, which means take away from the top end best case scenarios, but also boost up some of the worst case scenarios so that champions like that don't feel completely worthless if they fall behind, but they can't totally dominate everybody if they're ahead. So they've tried to do that with some champions, but I just don't think that they've had that as a clear goal, and they haven't done it enough. And I think that bringing back tanks would help out a lot because it would make some of these champions consistently inconsistent, if that makes sense. So you would actually have counters to assassins. People could actually, they couldn't just blind pick a Kayle every game, and they couldn't blind pick Irelia every game. They would have to be afraid of things, like Sejuani, like Ornn, like Malachi, like Shen. But right now, because there are no tanks, then it leads to super high damage squishy champions like Assassins not getting punished enough in the meta, and it leads to a very inconsistent and feels bad sort of meta if it's not one of those games where you're hard carrying. So that's my overall thought process. Contributing to this are the tower plates. I think just give way too much gold. I think they need to drop those down. Start off by making them 150. You might even have to go down to 125 or 120. Make the top lane more worthwhile. Both make the jungle camps, the Gromp side. They need to balance the colors, which is part of jungle, and so they need to make the experience and gold available on each side of the map equal. Because right now, the side with the golems, red, and the chickens, it give more experience and more gold. So naturally, junglers are going to gravitate towards there. Also, red buff is more important in general for most of the jungler champions. So when you're on blue side, you get all of that in the bot lane. So you get to just basically camp bot lane. If the top laner, or if the other jungler ever goes top lane, you get a free dragon. And if you get kills in the bot lane, then you get, multiple kills, multiple tower plates. You just snowball so much harder. Most games are won by whichever team camps bottom, and blue side can do that easier because their red side camps are down there. And that gives more experience, more golds. There's just no reason to ever go to the top of the map. So I think if they equalized the gold and experience on each side of the map, that would help a ton. I think it needs to be way more punishing if you miss your camps or if you're late on them. I think they need to get rid of the rubber banding in the jungle so that if someone just 24/7 camps a lane, then they're falling behind in experience if they don't get a kill every time. Because right now, you can just... It's not even a waste, really, just to use 3 ganks bottom to get someone to blow a flash and be a minute or two late on your camps in the jungle, because you can just go back and get them later. They're worth more golden experience because the enemy jungler got ahead of you. So I think that that's a huge problem, and I think you should be punished more if you get counter jungled or if you lose camps. I think that I know that metas where everyone just power farms the entire time and just never ganks, those are really boring. But I think there have been metas where there's a balance, right? Where you could have some of these farming champions and you could have some gank champions both be useful. But right now it feels like it's pretty much all gank, hard snowball champions for the most part. So that's something I'd work on. And then add something like Rift Herald's okay, I guess. Rift Herald is super snowbally though. Either you get a gank and use it correctly and it just completely breaks open the game. You get 2 or 3 towers and it's just lights out in 15 minutes if you get a successful gank. Or it's just kind of worthless and you can't get enough pressure and it just doesn't do anything. And it takes forever to kill. If you try to solo the Rift Herald with most champions, it's going to take 2 or 3 times as long as it would take you to kill Dragon. So I just think that there needs to be something else. And it doesn't spawn till 10 minutes. I think there needs to be something else in that spot while you wait on Baron that is relatively equal to Dragon, so that if somebody wants to camp bottom, then they can get countered by someone taking this objective top. So I don't know what that would be. Maybe just rework Rift Herald to have it spawn every 5 minutes starting at 5 and have it do less damage to towers but still apply pressure and allow it to be soloable on par with dragons. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe there's another buff that it would give. Instead of pressuring towers, maybe it could give some other kind of buff. I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that right now bottom is just too efficient. It's too good to just camp bottom. And so they need to make it they did add Rift a couple of seasons ago, and that's a step in the right direction. But like I said, it takes too long. It's 10 minutes. Bottom could have already been camped out and murdered by then, and it just takes too long to kill. Maybe just make it a huge gold reward, just huge golden experience boost, right? so that you get it like really far ahead of the enemy jungler if they can't bottom and you're able to get that thing. So I don't know what the answer is, but those are the things that I think of. I just think the tempo's too fast in the game right now, and it's too inconsistent because so many of these champions are so reliant on snowballing. Okay. So let's talk about what they're actually doing. Spoiler alert, they're not fixing most of those problems, but I just figured I'd throw them out there, just to have something to talk about for the first 10 minutes, just to let you know what my vision is of where I think, they should go with some of these balance changes. Okay, so Aurelion Sol is just kind of a weird champ. Very few people play him. He's one of the least played champions in League, if we look. He is actually literally the least played champion in League of Legends right now. And his win rate's like not that crazy, It's always like 51 or 52%. But for someone who is only played by one tricks, basically like no one just randomly plays Aurelion Sol, like that's actually not that high. A lot of one trick champions end up having like a fairly high win rate. So something like, let me see, Riven is a good example of that. And she's almost always she might actually be lower right now, of course, now that I say it. But historically, she has floated, and they did nerf her a couple of patches ago. But historically, she has floated around, 51, 52%. So she's actually pretty low because they nerfed her Q fairly hard. But just in general, champions that don't attract a large player base have higher, like Singed, for example. Like no one randomly plays Singed. It's pretty much just one tricks that plays Singed, and he has a pretty high win rate. So I think you can just leave those champions alone. I don't know. Like I think it's okay to have some champions that are just weird that like most people don't want to play, but that are in like an okay state. Like they have about a 50% win rate. Like I don't know, something like Kled. Not a lot of people play Kled. Not a lot of people play like Urgot right now or whatever. Like I think it's okay if there are low populations of champions. Like I don't think that everybody, like Heimerdinger, I do think they could buff or nerf Heimerdinger, or like buff him a little bit and probably be okay. But in general, he's just a weird champ played by one tricks, And I think it's okay to have champs. It makes people feel cool, like they're part of some kind of cult, if they main something that's like, off meta or is not mainstream, It's just kind of in a lore. Some people just really love to do that, like to be the underdog, like to, have the secret OP champs and all that. So, I think that's healthy for a game with 150 champions to just have, like 10 or 15 weird champions that just don't get picked very often. So, anyways, I don't think they needed to buff him or nerf him, but what they ended up doing was basically, I think, nerf him. So, his stars don't do as much damage now, although if you get CC'd, it doesn't pull them in anymore, so it allows you to be a little bit more consistent when they're out. They have a little bit better scaling early, but far worse scaling later at 0.25 instead of 0.23. Star Surge, you can level that up. I believe that's what you level second, at least historically. I think you level Celestial Expansion W first. So that means, around level like 10 or so, this is a buff, but before that it's a nerf, or neutral at best. He does get a little bit more movement speed, which is kind of cool. A couple of just quality of life things. And then this is kind of the weirdest one with Celestial Expansion. Before, you could just, like, it was toggleable. You could just turn this on and leave it on as long as you wanted in a fight. Or to wave clear, but now it pushes them out, but it only lasts for 3 seconds, and it has a cooldown on it. So early game, you're only going to be able to push it out for 3 seconds with an 8-second cooldown. So I feel like that's kind of awkward. Once it ends, he gets 40% movement speed. I don't understand why it's when he ends. Maybe they thought it would be too powerful when he like cast it if he gets bonus movement speed. I think that would make more sense though. Like you cast it, maybe not 40%. I hate decaying movement speeds too because it's so hard to calculate. Like what the hell does that mean? Is it because like the Soraka thing, they were saying they were going to add decaying movement speed onto her Q, and I was like, holy crap, she's getting a lot of movement speed. And then it turns out she only got maximum movement speed for like, half a second, and then the rest of it fell off like 90% for the remaining 4 seconds. It's like decaying is just so dumb. Just give it a flat movement speed that people can understand. Instead of 40% decaying, just make it like 20 flat for a second and a half. so people know what that means. But anyways, I wish they would give him a much smaller number and just give him the movement speed while he has it activated for those 3 seconds, because then you could actually trade. You can say, okay, I'm going to turn this on, I'm going to run up, I'm going to hit him with a couple of stars, and then I'm going to run away, and that'll be that, you know? So, I don't know. It just feels really bizarre to me. Like, what are they accomplishing? I guess you can double to use it as, like, an escape tool now, but then you're, like, wasting his whole thing that he's supposed to do, which is, like, trying to keep people, like, at a certain distance so that the stars hit him, to kind of like kite him perfectly in a certain zone. So I don't know. It just feels really confused to me, really weird. And the mana cost is, I guess it's cheaper early. So like if you kept this out for 3 seconds, you know, it'd be like 100 something mana, but 106. But this would be just 70. So that's good early. But then later, I'm not so sure. It's 40 mana here, and then 3 of these would be 90. So that's 130. So I guess it is cheaper across the board mana-wise. But I just feel like, I don't know, it just seems really weird, and you don't have as much control. Like, you can't just leave it out as long as you want in a team fight. You're going to have these windows of, like, extreme weakness, even if it is only 2 seconds. Like, it just feels really inconsistent and weird. Like, why would you do that? Because you want to get a lot of mana on him, typically, with, like, Rod of the Ages, so that you can, you know, in a fight, leave it out the whole time for the fight. I don't know. It seems very bizarre. And then he loses the free bonus movement speed, which is huge. So even if you didn't have your Comet of Legend activated, you would still like run back to lane faster, or you could still like rotate faster. So that's a pretty big hit. You have longer range with Comet of Legend, which is cool, I guess. The cooldown is higher though. A lot higher. Like 20 seconds. On a basic ability? Like not even an ult? For real? I mean, look, I know it's good for roaming, but, like, I mean, what's Talon's thing where he jumps over walls? I don't even know, but I know it's not more than a minute, or I feel pretty confident. Maybe it is more than a minute. I don't know for sure. But it just feels like, okay, yeah, it's good at roaming, but, like, that's just dumb. Like, it's not a guaranteed kill. Like, when I'm thinking something is, like, you know, 80 seconds on a basic ability, and there's not many of those out there, I'm thinking, like, that thing better kill somebody. Guaranteed. But yeah, that's just way too long. That's ridiculous. So, I don't know. I think they should make it a lower cooldown on that, like significantly lower cooldown on that roam, but just maybe allow him to get knocked out of it faster, or I don't know, just show him on the mini map when he activates it, like a new snowball or something. I don't know. It just feels like that they should balance it around him being able to do that more often. So, I don't know. That seems terrible. And then the speed is a little bit faster. Okay, whatever. I mean, you don't... I'm pretty sure you don't put points in this, right? It's all like, it's max W and then Q. It might even be max Q and then W. I don't know. But it's one of these two. These are the two you max first. And then Comet of Legend should just be a thing you put 1 point in. So it's going to be like 20 extra seconds permanently, and the speed is still going to be 600. So... this just feels awful. Like I don't know what this was trying to accomplish, but I think it's failed. It doesn't make him easier. It doesn't make him more accessible. In fact, it makes him harder, because now you have to play around these like 3-second windows of trades and find some way to use this 40-second cooldown when you can't trade anymore because your stars go in. So I don't know. Seems awful. I don't get it. Like. You know, if they're scared that he wave clears too hard and that he can roam too easily with Comet of Legend, okay, make his, like, Celestial Expansion, like, do less damage to minions. Like, I don't know. Like, that's how I would balance the roaming. Is like, okay, he can still, like, push all right, but we want to lower his ability to push so that he can't roam as successfully. I mean, I haven't really played him hardly ever, so I don't know for sure. But I would think if you were trying to make him more appealing to the masses, you would do something like speed up the stars and lower their damage, or something like that in general, so that it's more likely the stars are going to hit when like someone gets closer. And then I think doing this thing where like when he turns on the stars, if you want to do that, it gives him some movement speed for a little bit of time. But then just, like, make the stars do a little bit less damage so that he can consistently do some damage, but he can't like do like the super high damage. So I think that would make him more accessible to the masses if you even want to do that. And I don't even think it's necessary to do that. So I don't know. That's enough time on Sol. But yeah, I think he's going to get hit pretty hard. I mean, maybe not because it is only one Strix playing him, but I feel like this is bad. I don't think anyone's going to be happy with this. Okay, Galio. Interesting. Galio is one of those champions where, once again, they just seem very confused about what they want to do with this champion. Just because he's been so strong and competitive. That's another theme of the year. Champions that are really good and competitive are not very good in solo queue, and I think that that's very frustrating for a lot of people out there because, you know, you'll get those people in your games like, oh my god, Bjergsen had this 9-1 game on Akali. I want to play Akali first time. And it's like all of these champions that feel broken a lot of times in pro end up not being very good in solo queue. And I know there's going to be some disconnect typically, but I think it's cool if there are some champs that are like pretty good in both modes so that people can watch pros and actually win a couple of games if they want to copy them. But I just feel like that's just not the case right now. I mean, if we look at pick rate, like just look at this. We got Aatrox, 49%. We got Yuumi. I think Yuumi might actually literally be the lowest win rate champion in the game, who I think can be very strong, but is just not good for a lot of people. Yeah, 43.5% on Yuumi. Okay, Irelia. Almost, like, not even 45% win rate. Sejuani's probably fairly consistent. Silas. 47%. So it just feels like that has been happening more and more and more over the last couple of years. It's like the stuff that, you know, people see the pros play are just not good for average people in solo queue. So I think it's okay to have some of that, but I think that there should be a little bit more, like, not that big of a difference, right? There should be a little bit more accessibility for people for some of these cool champs. So anyways, Galio, Winds of War cooldown, okay. And Shield Duran. Now, this is significant. 90 extra damage on the W is a lot. So, I think he'll go up a couple of percentage points. I think this would probably mostly be for solo queue. I'd have to look over his exact stats and think about that a little bit more. I still don't think he's going to be great, but 90 damage on a maximum charge is a hell of a lot. Now, you have to actually put points in it to get that benefit, though. That's the thing. Now, yes, you know, you still would get, 30 extra damage if you only have 1 point in this. But this might encourage people to do more points. Let me just look at him real quick. Because 90 damage is a lot of scaling. But the question is, okay, if you're going to put points in your W, then what are you not putting points in? It feels like you still have to put points in your Winds of War. Because, you know, that's just your poke. That's most of your damage. They did lower the mana cost, so it is a bit more manageable. So I think you have to get at least 3 points of this in lane and probably max it. Okay, 5-second cooldown. They tried to make him more accessible a few patches ago. So a little bit of extra damage, 5-second cooldown, okay. Now this does... Okay, so if you put points in it, it does lower the cooldown. Okay, that's good. You get up to 20% of your max health as a magic shield. Okay, that's good. You do get extra magic damage reduction. Okay. And now you get up to 240 damage. So I guess you would max this second, or possibly even 3 points in Winds of War, and then max this for team fights. The thing is, remember, you cannot flash while you're charging up Shield of Duran now. So that's the big kicker, is you're going to have to flash early and then charge it, or you're going to have to, like, Justice Punch in and then try to charge it and get him. Now, you don't have to charge it for that long. I'm not sure. How long do you have to charge it for? 2 seconds? 2 seconds is quite a while. I guess even if you get half, I don't know. I think you would probably, if you wanted to max that, you would probably not go Justice Punch. Get like 1 point in Justice Punch. But that's gonna, like, this is gonna do way less damage too. That's the thing. This also does like 250. That's a 0.9, so it's very similar. And this also lowers the cooldown. And this just feels like it's probably more consistent. But I don't know. It seems awkward. Like, it's cool and everything. Like, 90 extra damage is a hell of a lot. But at the end of the day, especially if you're playing support, like, you're not maxing all 3 of your abilities. You're lucky if you can max 2 in most games. So, like, something has to get 1 point. Or, like, 2 points, right? So, what's it going to be? Justice Punch or Shield of Durand? So, like, this, it makes this a more compelling option. But it's really probably power neutral, because if you go for that, you're having to give up Justice Punch. So maybe it's slightly better, but not quite as good as it seems, because you would, I believe, typically only get 1 point in this because the taunt is the same regardless of how many points you get. So, I don't know. Maybe slightly better. Probably still not that great. Maybe against certain melee matchups. In Pro, maybe you see him some more, with like Jarvan comps and things where you can like trap people. Jarvan or Camille, but I think probably not. I mean, what? Let me see recently if he's been played at all. Virtually no play. Yeah, I just don't think it's going to matter that much for him, honestly. So, cool idea, but just the way that, like I said, the points end up getting distributed, it's really probably relatively power neutral. If you could still flash with that, then I think that would be a lot better. Then you would definitely go with this instead of Justice Punch, because you could more easily hit multiple targets in a fight. You know, if you hit like 4 people with 90 extra damage, that's 360 extra team fight damage. Like, that's a lot. But the fact that you can't flash, I think, just really makes Shield kind of awkward. Okay, Kalista, probably not going to matter. 2 AD is nice. I think they need to get rid of that 0.9 ratio on her. I would honestly just get rid of the, like the Oathsworn bonus or something, and just give her back more power in her stuff. I mean, I know you need to mark maybe a specific champion. Maybe they could make it, I don't know, maybe they could make it like grab, like the R is targetable instead, so you grab any ally instead of just your Oathsworn. So it's targetable, grab an ally, and then throw that ally in, so that you could play around other people. And in order to balance that out, get rid of the damage that, get rid of the bonus damage and all that stuff that she gets when being near her Oathsworn. I think that would be a lot more fair, you know. It would just give her more flexibility in fights, and maybe give her a bit more power. But as it stands, I don't think that's going to matter. She's so dangerous to buff because of pro play, but yeah, she's 20% win rate on the people that have tried her. But yeah, I don't think she's very good. She does a decent amount early, but she falls off pretty hard later, because, you know, in a meta where everyone's killing each other in like less than 1 second, you know, with all of these assassins and 1v9 champions, you know, it's going to take her like probably 5 seconds to stick them with enough spears to execute them. So, like, she's a lot better, I think, against things like tanks or just in metas where fights last longer, so you can actually stick your spears. But right now, I think it's just too fast, and she's just too weak. Okay, Kayle, I honestly don't know. Like, this is almost literally like 40 changes. Was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 changes. Literally 21 changes to a champion on the same patch. It's like, guys, is that necessary? Like, how am I supposed to interpret that? Like, why not do just like a couple of these changes, the biggest ones, and just see how it goes for a patch or two, and then if you need to adjust it some more, like, so be it. I just feel like some of these things, like all of this, is all of this really necessary for Sol? Like I say, it just doesn't do anything, and I feel like that's maybe similar to this. It's so hard for me to know. Like, yeah, you get your Arisen form instead of your faster than your Aflame. Um, so you become a ranged champion at 6, and then the Aflame is your basic attacks against non-structures additionally launch a wave of fire, dealing 10 to 30 extra damage to each enemy hit, and then the waves can critically strike. So this is, it's going to make her effectively ranged at Zealous. Kayle's basic attacks grant 6% attack speed for 5 seconds, stacking 5 times, 30% attack speed, gains 8% movement speed. Okay. So, makes her ranged, but she doesn't do the extra sort of on-hit damage early. That's probably a buff. Giving her the more range, I think, is good. All basic attacks. So she can stack Zealous even against towers. Okay. Kayle's bonus attack speed from her Zealous form no longer increases to 10% bonus attack speed per stack when she's in her Arisen form. Okay. So it's always 6%. So that's like a loss of 20% bonus attack speed at max stacks. That seems pretty rough. Fire waves no longer deal true damage. Now that is massive. So she's going to do way, way less, like, 1v9 ultra carry at because that was the thing that was super OP about her, was the permanent true damage on every single attack. So that is a massive, massive nerf to her. And yes, that probably needed to happen because, once again, she's kind of one of the poster childs for what I've been talking about, where it's like completely worthless and less fed, and you get to late game, but then extremely difficult to stop late game. So that makes her very inconsistent. So they needed to do something about the true damage, but it feels like they should have buffed her a little bit more, or like buffed her early game. I would have buffed her early game more if they want to do that to her late game, but that seems extremely rough. She does gain 575 attack range, I guess, but I don't know. If you hit a champion with Q, you gain some mana back. Okay. Shorter delay. Okay, so it lasts longer but shreds less. Seems relatively power neutral, maybe slightly better. Okay, they nerfed that a lot. The E does way less. 4% less. The target's missing health. Slightly buffed the on-hit ratio. Slightly buffed the ult. I mean, yeah, costing 0 mana is cool, but it's like usually you're going to have 100 mana. So I think it's bad. I think it makes her really bad. I don't know. I mean, getting the range earlier is a very big deal. I think in the best case scenario it's going to be power neutral. In the worst case scenario it's a nerf. So yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. She already wasn't like that great of a champ. I mean, she's like okay after like her nerfs over the past like 7 patches or so, but she's like 50%. Can't you just leave her alone? Like, oh, she's fine. I don't know. I guess they decided they want to do 21 different changes to her. Okay, Leona, 5 seconds. Now, Leona is already, like, okay. Once again, 50% champion. I don't know why they're, like, anything that's, like, 50% is probably sort of okay. Draven's OP, I think, but he does only have 50%. But I think statistically, like, you don't have to do that much. I mean, I guess they want people to pick her. I feel like she's already kind of bad against tanks. We're letting Leona really lock into the engaging supports that she fares well against. Really? You think she's good against engaged supports? You want to pick Leona into like Thresh? Pyke? Maybe Pyke. Because I feel like Leona's best against like squishy mages or enchanters. Like, I would want to be picking Leona into something like Lux or into, like Yumi or Soraka or something like that. I would not want to pick Leona into like Thresh or like Braum or Alistar. I don't know. Okay, so she's a little bit better, so that's nice. The really good thing about Leona is a 90-second cooldown ult that's a really good engage that has long range. So that's really kind of her claim to fame. And she can engage through a minion wave is another thing. So she can look very menacing without having to, try to get around the wave and play that little game of cat and mouse to line up your hook, right? Like you have to do with most hook champions. So I think that she has a very large effective threat range, and her ult is up a lot to make plenty of plays. So I don't really think she needed a buff, but okay. Lucian 3 attack damage. I think this champion's pretty good right now. I don't know why they're buffing. I mean, I guess statistically he's not, but it feels like he can be pretty strong in the early game. I don't know if buffing his early game is the answer. I think he's already fine there. I think like maybe lowering the cooldown on his dash or something. I mean, that could be pretty dangerous, but just like make him the king of mobility later on. Because his problem is he's really short range and he doesn't do like as much AoE as quickly as a lot of other AD carries. Now his ult does do a lot of damage. They did buff that a few patches ago, but if you think about Jinx just sitting there spamming rockets, or like Twitch ulting, or like Sivir, all of her stuff bouncing around, he has pretty weak team fight. So at least giving him a ton of mobility, I think would help. So either make every time he shoots, like reduce it a little bit more, like maybe an extra half a second per shot, or just lower the base cooldown on it. But either way, weird buff, but okay. All right, interesting quality of life for Nico. Pantheon does full damage to monsters. The E. I got Champion's just trash. And I said this was going to happen. Before the rework, he was at 51. I think I literally said last patch he was going to lose 4%. He lost 4%. So, and he's just really bad. Like, they just took away so much consistency. Like I keep saying over and over again, Pantheon was a consistent champion. You could walk up and just chuck spears at people. You had a fairly low cooldown ult, I think, that was semi-global that you could use to make plays around the map. It was just something you could count on. It was very consistent like clockwork. Yes, he was bad later, but he, was pretty good, especially in some matchups early. You would abuse your lane and then go roam. Then they added all this extra complexity to him, right? Like, you got to hit these spears now, and if you tap it, you only do partial damage. Like, the ult is like way longer cooldown. I don't know. It seems like they kind of wasted their time with that rework, I think. But at the end of the day, they're trying to make him the same thing. Like, they're trying to make him good early game, but like fall off late, which was his exact profile before. So they just added more inconsistency to that, which is not what you want from a lane bully. Like, lane bullies are supposed to be consistent. You're pretty much saying like, hey, I don't want to have to rely on like mechanical outplays later. I just want to dominate and get him to FF at 20. Like Garen, Darius, Pantheon, a lot of these lane bullies, like, you just don't want them to be particularly complex. Like, simple and consistent. But the enemy and they're one-dimensional. So the enemy knows what to do, and if they shut down that part of them, then they're not going to be good. That's just the price of consistency, or it should be, is that you should be pretty one-dimensional, fairly easy to shut down. Okay. Qiyana, lowering the damage by 10. It's probably fine. Qiyana does seem on the strong side of my games. I don't understand her, like, super well. I've never played her, and she's pretty new, but it does seem like she is like really strong in a lot of games. I don't think she's as much of a menace as some of these other like 1v9 champions, like Akali, Irelia, things like that. Like, if you catch her, you can kill her. She has fairly limited escapes. There's some, but I feel like the fact that she's AD also limits her a little bit. I mean, I know Irelia is too, technically, but she's okay. I mean, she's been kind of taking over pro play, I think, as well. Yeah, 71% presence. What's her 58% win rate? So, yeah, they got to nerf her for that. So, yeah, I mean, she probably needed a little nerf, but I think it's fine to not nerf her that much. 120 seconds. That's pretty big late game. 40 more seconds on your ult. That might be a little harsh. But, and I think she needs her ult to, like, really be effective. But, anyways, okay, obligatory Ryze change every patch. Some extra magic resist. Okay. Pretty terrible champ right now on this meta. Like, in pro, he's all right, you know. It's 4-2, 4 picks, 2 bans, so not a huge amount of presence. The problem with Ryze is he's a tier user, and you know, it just takes forever to charge that up in this meta. The game is probably, you know, going to be decided and done before you come online if you play Ryze. Like, he takes multiple items, and usually it's 2 charge items with tier plus rod. Although these days people might just go tier into something else like Morellonomicon. He's just too slow, I think, for most people in solo queue. And then Zyra. Now, this is an interesting one because I feel like Zyra is always, like, pretty good in solo queue, especially at gold and lower. You know, she's 51.5%. She's one of my most played champions historically. So the mana cost probably doesn't matter, although 140 is pretty ridiculous, so that, I guess that's good. But this extra, like, cooldown reduction could definitely be significant because you can't itemize CDR as Zyra really well, you know, because you need to get, you know, some pros will get, like, mobility boots. I still like doing sorcerer boots in solo queue, and then you're either, like, getting Oblivion Orb or you're just rushing straight to Leandries plus Rylai's. Just none of your items are going to have CDR. Like, the only way you're getting CDR is if you take Transcendence, you get 10%, and if you take Presence of Mind, or like Ulti Hunter or something like that, you could get a little bit in those ways, but I think just giving her a flat 20 on her ult's cool. I wish they would give her back the 10% on her plants. Like, her W back in the day, I think it even used to give 20 before they nerfed it, but it used to give you 20% CDR for free when you put points in your W. Because right now, her W, like, I think you have to get it just because you need as many plants as you can get, but it feels pretty bad. It feels pretty bad to have to get it because all you're getting, like, your plants don't get any extra survivability. Like, you just lower the cooldown on your plants. So I would like to see them reinstitute 2% per point overall CDR that you get passively like she used to have. 20% might be a bit much, but I think you could do 10%. Because, like, Zyra's big problem is that a lot of her spells are really long cooldowns. And if you miss, especially with your E, if you miss, you can get punished really hard. And you have, like, really low uptime on your damage. So you get some damage in there, but, like, a lot of other champions that are like Zyra, like Brand, have much shorter cooldowns. So, like, Brand's, most of his spells are, like, except for his ult, are, like, somewhere between 8 to 10 seconds. And Grasping Roots is 12. So, or they could make Grasping Roots on a scaling cooldown system. So they could start it at 12 and work it down to 8. Or if they thought that was OP, you know, they could start it at 14 and work it down to 10. But I think there needs to be some way to have more uptime on your E. But yeah, I think it's nice. I think she'll still be good in those lower brackets. She might still struggle a little bit at higher brackets, but I think this is definitely a move in the right direction. Bug fixes. Soraka now properly heals herself with R for more when she's under 40%. Okay, so she wasn't healing herself for enough. That's nice for Soraka. Okay. There's a couple of very close case scenarios where this will matter. Okay, that's probably fine. Anyways, yeah, that's going to be it. So I don't think it's going to shake up the main meta that much. Like, they, you know, are mostly nerfing some things for pro and doing, like, some really weird semi-reworks. So, like, Leona might move up a little bit in priority because of this. I'll have to, you know, think about it. But she's already, like, probably tier 2. And then, Kayle is, we'll see, probably worse. Maybe not. Galio's not going to matter. Kalista's not going to matter. Aurelion Sol's worse. Lucian, I mean, this might make Lucian, people pick him a lot more into things like Vayne or Kaisa early. So, like I said, I think Lucian's already pretty good right now. Pantheon's still bad. Qiyana, probably still pretty good. Ryze still bad. So, anyways, that's going to be it. Be sure to stay tuned. I will have the support tier list coming out either today or tomorrow. We'll see on the time. It's looking like probably tomorrow, but I should have that over the next couple of days. Then I'll see if I can also at least do an 80 carry tier list, and I might do some more as well. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and we'll see you next time. Don't forget, like and subscribe.